My boss fired me over a $3 million mistake, but when he found out I was the secret CEO of the company, he went speechless. The room froze as his eyes widened in disbelief, his mouth slightly agape like someone had just pulled the rug out from under him. It wasn't supposed to go this way. None of it was. Not the mistake, not even my firing, and certainly not this revelation that would unravel everything we thought we knew about power, trust, and identity within those polished walls. The day began like any other at Sterling Innovations, where sleek glass partitions separated cubicles filled with overachievers who lived for deadlines and bottom lines. My name is Ava Carter, or at least, that's what everyone here called me. To them, I was an ambitious mid-level manager, efficient, reliable, maybe a little too quiet during meetings but always delivering results on time. What they didn't know, what no one outside a select few trusted individuals knew, was that Ava Carter wasn't just another cog in the corporate machine. She was its beating heart. Sterling Innovations wasn't some startup scraping by on venture capital dreams. It was a global titan, dominating industries with cutting-edge technology and bold leadership strategies. And behind every groundbreaking decision, every innovative leap forward, stood me. Or rather, the real me, the woman hidden beneath layers of anonymity and carefully curated distance. You see, I was the secret CEO of Sterling Innovations. A role I'd taken on years ago after inheriting the company from my late father, whose sudden passing left a void nobody else could fill. But instead of stepping into the limelight, I chose to stay in the shadows. Why? Because I believed true leadership wasn't about titles or corner offices, it was about impact. By remaining unseen, I could observe without bias, make decisions based on merit rather than politics, and ensure the company thrived without becoming entangled in ego-driven battles. It worked beautifully, for a while. That morning, however, felt different. There was tension in the air, a subtle hum of unease rippling through the office floor. People whispered furtively behind their monitors, glancing toward the executive suite more often than usual. Something big was brewing, though I couldn't yet put my finger on it. I sipped my coffee, scrolling through emails when Greg Morrison, my direct supervisor, summoned me to his office. Greg was your quintessential alpha male leader, sharp suits, sharper tongue, and an insatiable hunger for control. He prided himself on being the face of Sterling's success, basking in accolades while delegating blame whenever things went awry. We tolerated each other professionally, he valued my efficiency, and I respected his ability to navigate boardroom politics, but there was never warmth between us. Only mutual utility. Close the door, he said curtly as I entered his office. His tone set off alarm bells immediately. Greg rarely wasted time on pleasantries unless something serious was afoot. I obeyed silently, taking a seat across from him as he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Ava, he began, dragging out my name like it left a bitter taste in his mouth. Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused? I blinked, genuinely confused. Damage? What are you talking about? He slid a folder across the desk, its contents spilling open before me. Contracts, financial reports, spreadsheets, all marked with glaring red annotations highlighting discrepancies totaling $3 million. My stomach dropped. This wasn't possible. These figures don't add up, he continued, his voice rising with barely contained fury. You authorized payments to vendors who haven't fulfilled their obligations. Funds were allocated incorrectly, deadlines missed. Do you realize what this means? Investors are already asking questions. Clients are losing confidence. And now, thanks to your incompetence, our reputation is on the line. I stared at the documents, my mind racing. None of this made sense. Every transaction required multiple levels of approval, including mine. How could such colossal errors slip through unnoticed? More importantly, why hadn't I caught them? I need answers, Ava, Greg demanded. Not excuses. If you can't explain yourself right now, then I'm afraid I'll have no choice but to let you go. Let me go? Fired? For a mistake I didn't make? The absurdity of the accusation hit me like a freight train. But arguing wouldn't help, not here, not now. Instead, I nodded stiffly, gathering the folder and standing to leave. As I reached the door, Greg added one final blow. And don't bother coming back until you're ready to own up to your failures. Back at my desk, I spread the incriminating papers across my workspace, scrutinizing every detail. Hours passed as I cross-referenced numbers, traced payment trails, and combed through communication logs. Slowly, painfully, a pattern emerged. Someone had tampered with the records, deliberately altering invoices, forging signatures, and rerouting funds to shell accounts scattered across offshore jurisdictions. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't just trying to sabotage operations, they were trying to frame me. The realization sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't negligence, it was betrayal. And given the scale of the operation, it likely originated from someone high up. Someone close enough to access sensitive data without raising suspicion. Someone like Greg. My suspicions solidified into certainty as I pieced together fragments of evidence pointing directly to him. Emails deleted from servers, security footage conveniently missing during key transactions, and most damning of all, a series of encrypted messages between Greg and an unknown contact discussing Phase 2. Whatever he was planning, it involved more than embezzlement, it threatened the very foundation of Sterling Innovations. But exposing him wouldn't be easy. Without concrete proof, accusing Greg risked turning the entire board against me. Even worse, revealing my true identity as CEO might destabilize morale among employees who trusted the public-facing leadership structure. No, I needed a strategy, one that played to my strengths while exploiting his weaknesses. Over the next few days, I worked tirelessly under the radar, gathering allies discreetly. First, I reached out to Elena Torres, head of IT security, who owed me a favor from years ago when I'd intervened to protect her job during a merger fallout. Together, we hacked into restricted databases, uncovering additional breadcrumbs linking Greg to fraudulent activities. Next, I enlisted Marcus Lee, our CFO, whose loyalty ran deeper than profit margins. Though initially skeptical, Marcus agreed to assist once I showed him irrefutable proof of Greg's schemes. Meanwhile, Greg grew increasingly desperate. Having terminated me publicly, he expected chaos to ensue. Instead, operations continued smoothly, almost eerily so. Questions arose among senior staff about why such a critical position remained vacant despite urgent needs. Rumors circulated about potential replacements, none of whom seemed remotely qualified compared to me. Frustrated, Greg doubled down on his efforts to discredit me further, leaking false narratives to industry insiders and pressuring colleagues to side with him. One evening, as twilight bathed the city skyline in hues of gold and crimson, I found myself sitting alone in the dimly lit conference room overlooking downtown. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on my shoulders. For years, I'd operated in secrecy, believing it shielded the company from unnecessary drama. Now it felt like chains binding me to silence while others manipulated events unchecked. Was it worth it anymore? Could Sterling survive if its invisible leader finally stepped into the light? Just then, the door creaked open, startling me from my thoughts. Standing there was none other than Greg himself, his expression a mix of smug satisfaction and thinly veiled anxiety. Clearly, he hadn't anticipated finding me still lingering around headquarters. "What are you doing here?" he snapped, striding toward the table. "I thought I made myself clear, you're done here." Ignoring his hostility, I gestured for him to sit. "We need to talk, Greg. About the $3 million discrepancy. About the forged documents. About everything." His eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm offering you a chance to come clean before things escalate beyond repair." For a moment, he hesitated, caught off guard by my composure. Then, emboldened by arrogance, he sneered. "Even if something were amiss, which it's not, you have zero leverage. You're nobody, Ava. Just another disposable employee." At that exact moment, the doors swung open again, and in walked Elena and Marcus, flanked by 2 uniformed security guards. Their presence spoke volumes, silencing whatever retort Greg had prepared. Behind them trailed members of the executive board, faces stern and resolute. "It seems we have quite a situation on our hands," Marcus announced, placing a thick dossier onto the table. "Care to explain these findings, Greg?" As shock registered on Greg's face, realization dawned on mine. This confrontation marked only the beginning of a larger reckoning, one that would test loyalties, redefine truths, and ultimately determine whether Sterling Innovations could rise above betrayal or crumble beneath its weight. Greg's face turned a shade of crimson I hadn't thought possible. His jaw clenched, and for a fleeting moment, he looked like a cornered animal, ready to lash out in desperation. But then something shifted. his shoulders slumped ever so slightly, as if the weight of exposure had finally cracked his veneer of invincibility. He glanced around the room, taking in the sea of impassive faces staring back at him, Elena with her arms crossed, Marcus holding that damning dossier, the security guards standing stoically by the door, and the board members seated like judges in a tribunal. "I don't know what kind of witch hunt this is," Greg began, his voice laced with manufactured indignation, "but I assure you, there's been some grave misunderstanding. Someone is clearly trying to sabotage me." "Oh, we're well aware of sabotage," Marcus interjected coolly, opening the dossier and extracting a series of documents. "These emails between you and an offshore account holder? The forged invoices? The rerouted funds totaling $3 million? None of these scream misunderstanding. They scream premeditated fraud." Greg's eyes darted wildly between the papers and the people in the room. For someone who prided himself on being untouchable, he was crumbling under pressure faster than anyone anticipated. Still, he wasn't going down without a fight. "You can't prove any of this," he spat, though his voice wavered. "Even if those emails exist, and I'm not saying they do, they could have been fabricated. You're all jumping to conclusions based on circumstantial evidence." Elena stepped forward then, her tone icy and clinical. "Actually, we can prove it. My team traced every digital footprint you left behind. Every keystroke, every login attempt, every server access, it's all logged. And guess what? It all points straight to you. Your IP address, your credentials, even metadata timestamps matching suspicious transactions. There's no way out, Greg." The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Greg sank into a chair, his bravado evaporating like mist in sunlight. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked small and pathetic. Yet, despite the overwhelming evidence against him, there was still one card left unplayed. One truth that would change everything. I stood up slowly, drawing everyone's attention. Until now, I'd remained quiet, letting Marcus and Elena handle the confrontation. But this was my company, my legacy, and ultimately, my responsibility. It was time to reveal the full picture. "Greg," I said, my voice steady but carrying an undeniable authority, "there's something else you need to understand. Something none of you here today are aware of." I paused, scanning the faces of the board members and executives. Some wore expressions of confusion, others curiosity, but all were riveted. Even Greg looked up, his brow furrowed in suspicion. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier venom. Taking a deep breath, I continued. "When my father passed away 5 years ago, he left Sterling Innovations in my care. Not because I wanted the spotlight or the accolades, but because I believed the company deserved leadership driven by integrity rather than ego. So I chose to operate from the shadows, not as just another employee, but as the CEO. Everything you see here, the innovations, the growth, the success, it's all been guided by me. Ava Carter isn't just a mid-level manager. She's the secret CEO of this company." The collective gasp that followed was almost comical. Mouths dropped open, chairs creaked as people shifted uncomfortably, and whispers erupted like a wave crashing over the room. Greg stared at me, his face pale, his lips moving soundlessly as if trying to process what I'd just said. One of the board members, a woman named Margaret Hensley, spoke first, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Is this true? Are you really?" "Yes," I confirmed, meeting her gaze directly. "Every decision, every strategy, every move Sterling has made in the last 5 years has come from me. I stayed anonymous because I wanted the focus to remain on the work, not the person behind it. But now, circumstances have forced my hand." Margaret exchanged glances with the other board members, their initial shock giving way to contemplation. Finally, she turned back to me. "If what you're saying is true, and assuming we verify it, then why didn't you step forward sooner? Why let Greg take credit for your achievements?" "Because exposing myself would have created chaos," I explained. "People look to leaders for stability. If they knew the CEO was operating undercover, trust might have eroded. Besides, I never sought recognition. What mattered most was ensuring Sterling succeeded. Unfortunately, Greg exploited that invisibility to further his own agenda." At this, Greg bolted upright, his face contorted with rage. "This is ridiculous. You think anyone will believe this absurd story? That you, some invisible puppet master, are actually running this company? No one will fall for it. But his words rang hollow. The board members were already discussing among themselves, comparing notes and piecing together patterns they'd overlooked before. How decisions always aligned perfectly with strategic goals. How crises were resolved swiftly and efficiently. How Sterling thrived even when public-facing leadership faltered. Slowly but surely, the pieces clicked into place. Marcus broke the hushed murmurs with a decisive nod. It checks out. We've reviewed past records, internal communications, and operational timelines. Everything leads back to Ava. She's telling the truth. Greg's knees buckled, and he collapsed back into his seat, defeated. Defiance gave way to resignation as reality settled in. He had gambled everything on maintaining control, only to discover he'd been playing chess against a grandmaster who had been several moves ahead the entire time. Yet, even as justice seemed within reach, a new challenge loomed. Unveiling my identity solved one problem but created another: how to rebuild trust within the organization. Employees idolized transparency, and secrecy, even for noble reasons, could breed resentment. Moreover, investors and clients needed reassurance that Sterling remained stable despite recent upheaval. As the meeting adjourned, I called for a company-wide assembly scheduled for the following morning. It was time to address the elephant in the room head-on, to explain my choices and chart a path forward. But more importantly, it was time to redefine what leadership truly meant, not as a title or position, but as a commitment to service, accountability, and shared vision. That night, as I sat alone in my office overlooking the glittering cityscape, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. Sacrifices made, risks taken, lessons learned. Tomorrow would bring uncertainty, scrutiny, perhaps even backlash. But one thing was certain: Sterling Innovations belonged to its people, and I intended to lead them, not from the shadows but alongside them, as equals forging a brighter future together. The next morning, the atrium buzzed with anticipation. Employees from every department filled the space, their murmurs creating a low hum that echoed off the glass walls. Some looked curious, others skeptical, but all were eager to hear what I had to say. The air was thick with tension and unanswered questions. Standing on the small stage at the center of the room, I took a deep breath, gripping the edges of the podium in front of me. This was it, the moment where I would lay everything bare. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steady despite the weight of the occasion. "I know you're wondering why we've gathered here today. By now, rumors have likely spread about recent events involving Greg Morrison, as well as revelations about myself." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd, confirming my suspicion. I paused, letting the murmurs subside before continuing. "For years, I've operated behind the scenes as the CEO of Sterling Innovations. It wasn't because I didn't trust you or value transparency, it was because I believed leadership should be defined by actions, not titles. My goal was always to ensure this company thrived without distractions or unnecessary drama. Unfortunately, recent events have shown me that secrecy can sometimes do more harm than good." I glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of familiar faces. Some nodded in understanding, others still looked unsure. But I pressed on, determined to make them see the bigger picture. What happened with Greg was a breach of trust, not just for me personally, but for all of us. He manipulated systems, exploited vulnerabilities, and tried to shift blame onto someone innocent. His actions threatened the very foundation of what we've built together. But let me be clear, Greg does not represent Sterling Innovations. You do. Each and every one of you has contributed to our success, and it's time we celebrated that truth openly. A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, bolstering my confidence. I continued, "Moving forward, things will change. Transparency will no longer be optional, it will be fundamental. Starting today, I'll step into the role of CEO publicly, working alongside you rather than from afar. Together, we'll rebuild trust, strengthen accountability, and reaffirm our commitment to innovation and excellence." Applause erupted spontaneously, growing louder as employees rose to their feet. For a moment, I felt overwhelmed by their support, their resilience, and the shared sense of purpose that bound us together. When the clapping finally subsided, I added one final note. "I want to thank each of you for your hard work, dedication, and belief in this company. We've faced challenges before, and we've overcome them because of you. Let's continue building something extraordinary, not just for ourselves, but for future generations who will carry the Sterling legacy forward. In the weeks that followed, Sterling underwent a transformation unlike anything it had experienced before. With Greg dismissed and legal proceedings underway to recover the stolen funds, morale soared as employees embraced the new era of openness and collaboration. Town hall meetings became regular occurrences, allowing teams to voice concerns, share ideas, and celebrate milestones together. Even investors expressed renewed confidence, impressed by the company's swift response to adversity. Elena and Marcus played pivotal roles in implementing reforms, ensuring robust safeguards against future misconduct. Meanwhile, I made it a priority to connect with employees on a personal level, joining brainstorming sessions, attending team lunches, and even participating in holiday parties. Slowly but surely, the divide between management and staff dissolved, replaced by a unified culture rooted in mutual respect and shared goals. One afternoon, as I walked through the office floor, I noticed a young intern sketching designs on a whiteboard. Her name was Priya, and she'd recently joined the marketing department. Intrigued, I stopped to ask about her project. "It's an idea for a sustainability campaign," she explained shyly. "I thought maybe we could partner with local nonprofits to promote eco-friendly practices while showcasing Sterling's innovations." Impressed by her initiative, I encouraged her to present the concept during the next strategy meeting. To my delight, her proposal received enthusiastic feedback, eventually evolving into a flagship initiative that earned Sterling widespread acclaim. Watching Priya beam with pride reminded me why I'd fought so hard to protect this company. It wasn't just about profits or prestige, it was about empowering people to dream big and achieve greatness. By the end of the year, Sterling Innovations reached unprecedented heights. Revenue soared, employee satisfaction hit record levels, and partnerships flourished globally. At the annual gala celebrating these achievements, I stood on stage once again, this time surrounded by colleagues who had become friends, mentors, and allies. "As I look out at all of you tonight," I said, my voice filled with emotion, "I'm reminded of how far we've come, and how much further we can go when we stand united. Sterling isn't just a company, it's a community. And communities thrive when they're built on trust, integrity, and shared vision. Thank you for believing in me, in yourselves, and in the limitless possibilities ahead." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing long after the event ended. As I stepped down from the stage, Marcus approached with a grin. "You did it, Ava. You turned chaos into triumph." "Not me," I replied, shaking my head. "All of us. Together." And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, cheers, and the warm glow of accomplishment, I knew Sterling's best days were yet to come. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel truly proud, not of hiding in the shadows, but of stepping into the light and embracing the power of collective strength. Ava Carter, a mid-level manager at Sterling Innovations, is secretly the company's CEO, operating from the shadows to prioritize impact over ego. When her boss, Greg Morrison, accuses her of causing a $3 million financial mistake and fires her, Ava discovers that Greg orchestrated the fraud to frame her and embezzle funds. Realizing she must act, Ava works with trusted allies, Elena, the IT head, and Marcus, the CFO, to gather evidence against Greg. During a confrontation with Greg, Ava reveals her true identity as the secret CEO, shocking everyone present. The board verifies her claims, exposing Greg's crimes and restoring faith in Ava's leadership. However, Ava faces the challenge of rebuilding trust within the company after years of secrecy. She decides to step into the public role of CEO, committing to transparency and collaboration. At a company-wide meeting, Ava explains her reasons for staying anonymous and outlines a new vision for Sterling: open communication, shared accountability, and innovation. Employees respond positively, rallying behind her renewed commitment to their collective success. Over the following months, Ava fosters a culture of inclusivity, empowering employees like Priya, a young intern whose sustainability campaign becomes a major initiative for the company. With Greg gone and reforms in place, Sterling thrives, achieving record revenue and employee satisfaction. At the annual gala, Ava reflects on the journey, crediting the team's unity and resilience for overcoming adversity. The story ends on a hopeful note, with Ava embracing her role as a visible leader and looking forward to a brighter future for Sterling Innovations.